Alright guys, so I did receive the parts from the dealer. So here are the parts we just received. This is our throwout bearing. Here is the part number. So we're gonna install this throwout bearing on the transmission. So right there, that's a new throwout bearing right there. And then here is the clutch assembly. So over here is our pressure plate and the clutch disc. Okay. So here's the disc and the pressure plate. And right here is the flywheel. Okay. So here is our new flywheel. So as you can see, everything is right there, brand new. Let me show you the part number for the flywheel. So the part number is right there, and then the part number for the clutch assembly. Let me close this box so I can show you the part number for the clutch assembly. So here's the part number for the clutch kit. Okay, so we got everything here. Now we're gonna install the new throwout bearing on the transmission. After we install the throwout bearing on the transmission, then we're gonna go to the vehicle and install the new flywheel. So now let's install the new throwout bearing on the transmission. Alright, so we got all the 3 bolts removed. So now we're gonna slide the throwout bearing out. So here it is. Okay, so here comes the old throwout bearing. So we're gonna get it out of the way. We're gonna clean up this surface here, and then we will install the new throwout bearing. Alright, so we got the bell housing cleaned. So now we're gonna install the new throwout bearing. So here is the old one and here is the new one. As you can see, they both look identical. So that's good. So we're gonna install this one. Alright, so we got the new throwout bearing installed. So now let's go to the vehicle and install the new flywheel. Alright, so now we're gonna undo these 6 bolts so we can remove the flywheel. So I'm gonna seat you guys over here so we can get the flywheel removed. You see this? Yeah, so this flywheel is completely worn out. Alright, so we got all the bolts for the flywheel removed. So now we're gonna rock the flywheel back and forth so we can remove it. All right, so here comes the old flywheel. So the old flywheel is removed. So now let's get it out of the way. All right, so now let me bring you guys over here at the bench so we can look at both flywheels, and then we will install the new one. All right guys, so here are both flywheels, the old one and the new one. So let's hold on this dowel pin over here and let's try to shake this friction plate. You see this? So this flywheel is worn out, and these flywheels actually wear out a lot, okay? This is a very wear item, and it's always recommended to replace these flywheels every time you're doing the clutch on these vehicles. So as you can see, this one is noisy and it's worn out. Now let's try to shake the plate, the friction plate on the new one. So watch that, and let's touch this dowel pin. As you can see, no play on the new one. See, I touched this dowel pin. So this plate over here is not moving. And look at this. Okay, so this is the problem. All right, so now let's take this new flywheel to the vehicle so we can install it. Now, I have to mention that this flywheel only goes in one way. So there's no other way you can put it on. So you don't have to mark it. There's some flywheels, you have to mark them for the position of the weight behind the flywheel to avoid vibrations in the drive line when you put everything back together. So when you install this one, this flywheel only goes in one way. I don't know if you can tell, if you look at the position of these holes, they are slightly offset from each other, because look at the gap between this hole and this one and this one and this one and then this one and this one and that one. You'll see that the holes, I mean the gap between these holes is slightly different. Okay, so there's no way, you cannot put this the wrong way. You have to make sure that these holes are aligned, otherwise the holes on the flywheel will not align with the holes on the crankshaft flange. Okay, so I wanted to mention that. So you don't have to worry about marking this flywheel. Alright, so as you can see, we got all the bolts snug. Now we're gonna tighten the flywheel bolt. The torque spec for the flywheel bolt is 44 foot-pound. So I'm gonna grab a torque wrench so we can torque the flywheel bolt. Alright, so that's good. That's 44 foot-pound. That's good. Good. Alright, so all the flywheel bolts are torqued down. So now I'm going to bring our clutch disc and our clutch pressure plate so we can install them. So here is our clutch assembly. This is the clutch disc and this is the clutch pressure plate. Okay, so the clutch disc is gonna go on the pressure plate this way. I don't know if you can tell, the clutch disc has one side that sticks out a little bit, and then there's another side that's flat. The side that's flat is gonna go against the flywheel, and then the side that kind of sticks out a little bit, okay, this over here is gonna go inside the pressure plate. So it's gonna go this way. Okay, this is how we're gonna install it on the vehicle. Okay, now the thing is, if we install it this way, the disc between the flywheel and the pressure plate can kind of be at an angle or like this. So what we want is, we want this splined hole on the disc to be centered with this opening over here on the pressure plate. Because if this is well centered, it's going to be so easy to install the transmission, because the primary shaft is going to get splined into these splines over here on the clutch disc. Now, to make sure that every clutch disc is centered, we're going to use this tool, okay? We're going to use this little tool. We're going to insert it and make sure that this disc is well centered when we tighten all the bolts for the pressure plate. That way, once we remove the tool, this opening over here will be centered. So we kind of want it this way, not this way, but we want it well centered, kind of like that. If it's well centered, it's going to be so easy to install the transmission. That way, once we get everything lined up, we're just going to push the transmission forward and the primary shaft is going to slide in. But you have to have this tool to make it easier. Sometimes you can just use your eyes to look at it and make sure everything is centered, but it's so easy when you have this tool installed. Okay, so now let's take this clutch assembly to the vehicle so we can install it. So the clutch kit is gonna go this way. Now there are dowel pins on the flywheel that will help us center the pressure plate. So now I'm gonna install my centering tool. Okay, so just right there. So now we're gonna install the pressure plate bolt. Alright, so now that we got all the pressure plate bolts started, now we want to make sure that our disc is centered. Okay. So I don't know if you can tell, but right there, our clutch disc is centered. Before we tighten these bolts, we have to make sure that the disc is centered, because otherwise, if we tighten the bolt already, we won't have enough room to adjust the disc. Like right now, the disc is moving. I don't know if you can tell. Okay, so you want to make sure that the disc is centered before you tighten the bolt. I'm gonna remove this tool so we can double check. I don't know if you can tell. Let me bring you guys in. So right there, the disc is completely centered with the center hole of the pressure plate. So we're good. So now we can tighten the bolts for the pressure plate. So I'm gonna reinstall this centering tool over there. We have to keep it on while we're tightening the bolts for the pressure plate. So we're gonna crisscross these bolts. We have to make sure that everything is being tightened evenly. Alright guys, so we have tightened the bolts for the pressure plate. So now I'm gonna remove my disc centering tool. So as you can see, our clutch disc is centered. So now we're gonna raise the vehicle so we can install the transmission. The whole piece warmed up. Okay. There we go. Yeah. I like that.
You got the pickup on the back.
Okay, so now, yeah, there we go, Steve. Now, jack it up a little.
Hang on, don't do anything yet. Zoom up. Keep going.
No.
Keep going.
There we go. There we go. I like the sound of that. Oh, here, Steve.
You're gonna have to.
This one's gonna go. These bottom ones. All right, so that's awesome. As you guys can see, the transmission is on. So Chris and Steve are putting the bottom bolts on, and then we're gonna lower the vehicle. Then we will put the transmission mount on. And at that point, everything else will just be putting everything back together.
18.
Yeah, that's good. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
You got it.
Sweet. All right, guys. So we got the transmission on. We also got the bottom bolt installed. So as you can see right there, we got that bolt on and these two down here. So now we're gonna lower the vehicle so we can install the transmission mount. So this transmission mount over here is gonna go this way. Alright, so we got this bolt tightened. So now the next step is going to be installing this bottom piece of the transmission mount. So now I'm going to put a jack under the transmission and jack it up so that the transmission can come level to this mount, and then we will put the bolt for the transmission mount. So now let's jack up the transmission a little bit. All right, so we're gonna jack up the transmission. Alright, so the transmission mount is tightened. So now I'm gonna remove the jack under the transmission. So we're good. So now I am going to remove this engine support bar. Alright, so the engine support bar is removed. So now let's start putting everything back together. Alright, so now I'm gonna install these two top bell housing bolts. So we're gonna install this one. So at this point, everything I'm doing is the reverse process of the removal process, okay? So we're basically putting everything back together, making sure all the bolts are tightened, and then we will start the vehicle, test drive it, and I'm pretty sure once we put everything back together, we're gonna start it, the noise won't be there when we press the clutch pedal. So let's put everything back together. All right, so that's tightened. So now we're gonna install our shifter cables. So we're gonna remove this bungee cord that we had put over here. So this is gonna go this way, okay? So we're gonna install these bolts that hold the shifter cable bracket in place. Alright, so I've tightened the bolt for the shifter cable bracket. So now we're gonna install the second shifter cable. So right there, both shifter cables are installed. So now the next step is going to be reconnecting this ground cable over here. This ground cable is going to be reconnected, and also the clutch line, I mean the hydraulic line for the throwout bearing. I don't know if you guys can see here, but I'm going to bring you at this angle so you can see what I'm doing. Alright, so this clutch line, I'm just gonna remove this piece of sharp towel I put over here. So I had put this on just to prevent dirt to enter into the line. Now, after installing this, we're gonna have to bleed the system. We're gonna bleed the hydraulic line of the clutch, but we can do that afterwards. So we're just gonna push this in. All right, so we got the hydraulic line of the clutch installed. So now we're gonna install the air inlet tube. Alright, so the air inlet tube is installed. So now we're gonna tighten this bolt up here. Alright, so that's good. There is a clamp back here that I have to tighten. So now I'm gonna do that. Alright, so the clamp is tightened. So we're good to go. We're making progress. So now the next step is going to be installing the starter. So we're gonna remove this bungee cord that we had put over here to push these wires out of the way. Alright, so now we're gonna tighten the first bolt for the starter. Alright, so that's tightened. We're good. So now we're gonna reconnect the starter wires. So this wire is gonna go right here. So that's good. So now we're gonna reconnect that connector. So there's a little cover here that covers this wire. So right there, we're gonna put that on. So now we're gonna connect this ground wire. The next step is going to be installing this upper radiator hose. Alright, so that's on. So now this little hose is gonna come right here. So now the next step is going to be installing the battery tray. Alright, so here comes our battery tray. Alright, so the battery tray is installed. So now we're gonna bleed the clutch. I'm gonna show you a method that I like to use to bleed the clutch. I'm going to get a little hand pump. It's like a little spray bottle I have. Usually what I do is I will put brake fluid in it, and then I will open the bleeder screw over here on the clutch line. I will pump brake fluid here to fill up the throwout bearing inside the transmission with brake fluid. And then as we keep filling, fluid will eventually fill the throwout bearing, and it's gonna go up the line and then up to the clutch master cylinder, and then all the way up to the brake master cylinder reservoir, and then the brake master cylinder reservoir will start overflowing. Once that starts to overflow, that will tell me that we have enough fluid in the system. Then we're gonna go inside the vehicle and pump the clutch pedal a couple times. We're gonna keep the pedal to the floor and come up here, open the bleeder screw. We're gonna do that a couple times just to push all the air out, and then that should be good to go. I'm gonna grab that spray bottle and then I'll bring it here so we can do that. So here is what we're gonna use to pump brake fluid in the clutch system. So I'm gonna remove this little can out of its box here. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open it and fill it up with brake fluid. So we're gonna close that, and we're gonna use this hose. So we're basically gonna connect this hose between this can and the bleeder screw over here on the line. So I'll remove the cap. So we're gonna twist this. So we're gonna open the bleeder screw over here. So now we're gonna pump fluid. Now, as we are pumping, I'm actually gonna open up the master cylinder cap. Okay. Eventually, all the fluid we are pumping inside the clutch system is gonna go fill the thrust bearing first, and then it's gonna work its way up to the brake master cylinder. So let's keep pumping. We just have to watch this master cylinder right now. As you can see, the master cylinder brake level is low, but as I keep pumping, eventually the level on the brake master cylinder will get full, and then it's gonna overflow. Once it overflows, then we're gonna stop, and then we will manually pump it in the vehicle with the pedal. So I don't know if you can tell, but fluid is actually leaking out of the master cylinder reservoir. So right there. So that's good. So this tells me that our hydraulic system is full. Okay. So now I'm gonna remove this. So we're gonna close this bleeder screw. Okay, so that's closed. So as you can see, our brake reservoir on the master cylinder is full, so we're good. So now we're gonna bleed the clutch. I'm gonna have a helper in the vehicle to pump the clutch, and then we're gonna open this bleeder screw a couple of times until fluid comes out, until we have good fluid coming out without any air bubbles, and then that should be good to go. So now let's do that. Alright guys, so we got Chris in the vehicle pumping the clutch pedal for us. Okay, go ahead, pump the clutch. How does it feel? Soft? Okay. Pull it up with your hand. Oh, okay. Now hold it to the floor. So now we're gonna open this bleeder screw. So fluid should jump out. So right there. Okay. Pump. Hold. So we're gonna open this again. Oops.
Oh yeah, she's a bleeder.
Yeah, I'm gonna get covered with fluid here. Keep pumping. How does it feel?
Feels better.
Feels better? Okay, good. One more time. No, two more times. Okay, hold.
Holding.
Okay, I like how it's shooting fluid up like that. Okay, we got all the air coming out. Okay, pump.
Oh yeah.
Like that better?
Oh, she feels so good.
Awesome.
Nice
All right.
and tight. And she's a squirter.
Okay, now hold it to the floor. Okay, let's bleed one last time. Perfect. Pump. How is it?
Feels good.
Feels good? Okay, perfect. Awesome. We're good. All right, thank you. All right, so the clutch is bled. We're good. So I'm gonna reinstall this little cap. All right, so that's good. We bled the clutch. The pedal feels good. So now we can start putting everything back together. So at this point, so I can close the master cylinder. So we're good. All right, so now the next step is going to be installing the battery, the air filter box, and then start the vehicle. So we're almost done up here. So I'm gonna lift up the vehicle so we can reinstall the drive axles and the wheels. So let's go at the bottom of the vehicle, finish everything at the bottom, and then we'll come up here and do the last things, and then we should be good to go. So now let's lift up the vehicle. All right, so right now we're gonna make sure that everything down here is tightened, okay? So we're gonna install this little support bar over here. Alright guys, so pretty much everything down here is back together. All the bolts are tightened. All the connectors are reconnected. This inlet tube is connected. So now I'm gonna lower the vehicle a little bit so we can install the drive axle. Alright, so we got the axle bolts installed on the transmission side. So now we're gonna install the other end of the axle on the steering knuckle. Once the axle is on the steering knuckle, then we will tighten this bolt because we're gonna have to hold the drive axle stationary while we're tightening this bolt. So now let's do that. Alright. So we're gonna install our axle right there. So I like doing it this way because when you undo the lower ball joint, it's so easy to then just reconnect everything afterwards. It makes it so easy. So the drive axle bolt is tightened. So now I'm going to tighten the lower ball joint nut. Alright, so I got these bolts over here for the axle joint tightened. So now the next step is going to be installing the plastic cover that covers the back of the transmission. Alright, so that's good. This plastic cover is installed. It has 3 bolts up here and then another one down here. So that's good. So now we're gonna install the outer tie rod. Alright, so the outer tie rod is tightened. So now we're gonna install the tire. Alright guys, so we have put the tire back on. The driver's side is done. I'm gonna do the same thing on the passenger side. I'm gonna install the drive axle and then the tire. After the passenger side is done, I'm gonna lower the vehicle so we can finish everything up top. I'm not gonna show you how to install the drive axle on the passenger side because it's basically the same process. The process we did over here on the driver's side, it's the same on the passenger side. The only difference is that on the passenger side, the drive axle is a little bit longer, but it's the same thing, okay? So I'm gonna do that off camera and then I'll bring you guys back up once I have the tire on the passenger side installed so we can finish everything up top and then we will take this vehicle on a test drive. So I will do that and then I'll bring you guys back up. Alright guys, so I have put the tire on the passenger side back on. So now I'm gonna lower the vehicle so we can reinstall everything else on top of the transmission. Alright, so we have lowered the vehicle. So now the next step is gonna be installing the battery. So I'm gonna bring the battery here so we can install it. Alright, so the battery is installed and reconnected. So now we're gonna install the air filter box. Alright, so the air filter box is installed. I'm gonna put coolant in the radiator and then we're gonna reinstall the engine cover. Then we will start it and take it for a test drive. So now I'm gonna go inside the vehicle and start the engine. Alright, so as you guys heard, the engine runs. I forgot to install this battery cover. So I'm gonna put this cover on and then we're gonna take this vehicle for a spin. Alright, so that's good. So now let's go inside the vehicle and shift gears. I'm gonna show you how the gears are shifting smoothly and then we will take this vehicle for a test drive. Alright, so I'm gonna start the engine. Let's press on the clutch pedal. So right there, as you can hear, the engine is running. So this traction control light is on the dash because the vehicle is still on the lift, okay? The tires are not touching the ground, that's why. So now let's shift gears. So let's go to first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, reverse. Okay, now I'm gonna start letting off on the clutch pedal. my wheels are starting to spin. Okay, so as you guys can hear, the noise is no longer there. Remember before, when I was pressing on the clutch pedal, every time I released, there was a grinding noise coming from under the hood. So right now we're in first gear. Now I'm gonna start letting off. As you can see, the noise is no longer there. So this is fixed, guys. So now let's take this for a spin. I'm gonna turn off the engine. Let's lower the vehicle completely on the ground, and then let's take this for a spin. Alright, so as you guys can see, we are driving and the noise is no longer there. You know, every time I step on the clutch pedal, there is no noise. It's actually really smooth right now, really quiet. Okay, so no lights on the dash. I mean, besides that tire pressure light. Okay, so this is fixed. Let's keep driving. I'm gonna find a spot where I can turn around so we can drive back to the shop. And once we get to the shop, we're gonna wrap up this video, and then we can call the customer so she can come and pick up her car. I'm gonna drive back to the shop. Once I get to the shop, I'm gonna bring you guys back up so we can wrap up this video. So I will turn off the camera right now. I will bring you guys back up once I get to the shop. So see you guys at the shop. Alright guys, so we are back at the shop. This vehicle is fixed. As you guys saw, the vehicle drives well. The grinding noise that was coming from under the hood is no longer there. So when I press the clutch pedal and release, it's quiet and smooth. So before, when I pressed the clutch pedal and shift gears, I could actually hear a grinding noise coming from under the hood every time I released the clutch pedal. But right now when I release it, everything is smooth and quiet. Okay, so that's it guys, this is fixed. Alright guys, I'm gonna leave it right over here. This is fixed. This is how you remove and replace a clutch kit on this 2013 VW Jetta. I hope you liked this video. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumb down. But if you do, you gotta tell me why so we can make better videos in the future. If this is your first time here, subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so you can get notified every time I upload a new video. If you have any comments, questions, criticism, leave them in the comment box. Thanks for watching guys. See you next time.